So good morning, everyone. I'm really excited today to be a moderator for this session and have an amazing panel. And I think we know each other from my days in Shira. And I think regardless of where we go, uh, because we support creatives, we always tend to, fall into each other.
Yeah, cross
So
paths.
cross paths and work together in future collaborations as well. So today we're going to talk about a specific topic, which is entrepreneurs, creatives, and funding. And I think we're at this current time that when we look at how our ecosystem has evolved, there is a lot of creatives are coming in. And I think Najla, you being one of the important pillars when it comes to entrepreneurship and supporting the creative industry, what do you think is happening in the ecosystem when it comes to more creative startups are coming in?
Thank you, Saeed. And first of all, it's really great to be up on a panel with you again. Saeed was with us for a couple of years at Shira as well, and as he said, we continue to cross paths in the ecosystem. And of course, Manar and Leila are entrepreneurs that have graduated from our programs at Shira. So it really feels like being home. And in the last 5 years, Shira was established in 2016. We've seen a real change in the way entrepreneurship in general is perceived. If you remember, in early 2015, entrepreneurship was known, but it wasn't as popular as it is today. And I think one of the big reasons that things have changed now is we actually see a lot more role models in the ecosystem. Now, I'm just talking entrepreneurship in general, say tech entrepreneurship. So there was a time when we didn't have a lot of role models that we could point to and say, look, here are some successful entrepreneurs. Now we have the likes of Mudassir and Magnus at Kareem. We have the likes of Souk and Noon and so on. So I think in terms of role models and inspiration, that is something that has changed a lot. The other thing that we've seen grow in the ecosystem is obviously the support. Again, when we started Shara in 2015 or 2016, there were barely any accelerators that we could point to. You could probably count them on one hand. You look today, and mashallah, in every emirate, there's accelerators and incubators and co-working spaces and so on. And over and above that, obviously, you have the funders or the investors who are supporting these businesses as well. So the ecosystem as a whole has developed. I think in terms of creatives, I don't think creatives ever saw themselves as entrepreneurs. They were like, either I'm an author, or I'm a singer, or I'm a writer, or a performer, or whatever it is, but they never really saw themselves as business owners. Yes. And I think that's changed over the last few years, especially because of technology. Because technology now allows them to scale their talents, as we'll hear from Manar and from Leila as well. So Manar, perhaps many years ago would have said, I enjoy writing and I'm a journalist and that's as far as I can go. Today, she can actually create her own digital media platform because of technology. And I think that's one of the main things that has changed with creatives. As a whole, obviously, in the UAE, there's been a lot of focus on the creative economy. At Shara, we've partnered with the Sharjah Media City, which is here, Shams, who have supported creatives a lot, whether it's in terms of licensing, whether it's in terms of educational workshops, in terms of offices, and in terms of funding as well. So we've worked closely with various entities to support creatives, and we've really seen that change amongst creatives to turn their talents into businesses as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The thing is at N5, because we support 3 sectors. Yeah. So at N5, we are an incubator that supports tech, design, and media. And the same thing what you're saying is that we try to support the tech startups, and because they're so mature, when it comes to business, we call them nerds. Yeah. they actually come and they just want licensed business set up, and they just want to get the business done and get going. And when it comes to the creatives, they tend to say, no, wait, we want to build something or create content, and then so it's a different dynamic. And we were struggling in the beginning to understand the different dynamics. Yes. And most of the creatives are actually really experts in their field.
Exactly.
And they're so creative. But when it comes to the business aspect, even monetizing, it's a bit challenging. Yes. So I think going to Manar, I looked at your bio and it's incredible. You've worked for the Khalij Art Museum, and you are the co-founder of Sikka magazine, and also you've worked for different organizations in the creative sector. What are your thoughts when it comes to and business success to succeed in the creative sector? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, to add to what Najla has said, it's never been easier to become an entrepreneur, especially with the UAE support. We have different accelerators. Shira, for me, has been a home since the onset of our journey. And you could start a creative business from the comfort of your bedroom, right? Like you could have an Instagram page, you can have a website running, you can have a magazine running within a week. But my thoughts about getting into the creative industry, I mean, we've had a conversation, Leila and I, earlier about how hard it is to raise funds in the creative industry as opposed to tech startups. So I would tell creative entrepreneurs to not depend on one stream of income when it comes. So, for example, if you have a magazine or if you have a newspaper or a periodical, don't depend on the sales of that periodical. You have to have multiple streams of income. So you could organize events, you could provide workshops, you could provide creative consultancies to different entities. So that is one thing that they need to keep in mind, that funding might not be as easy as opposed to tech and other startups in the field, and I would tell them to be perseverant as well. You're not going to see results straight away. And Najla and I always have this conversation. Where I have my doubts about the career path I pursued, but it takes time. It takes effort. You need to be perseverant. The other day, I had a conversation with a business owner who told me that this year alone, he received 50 rejections, and just one person who said yes to fund them. So it's going to be like that. And if you want to get into this field, you need to have that mindset that it's not going to be easy, but it's worth it. Said, we had this conversation earlier where we're saying with startups, it's a progress always. You're always learning something. Even if, for example, you didn't raise funds, you're always learning something. You're learning new ways of doing things.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, I remember in Shura in 2017 when I came in and we started the incubator.
Yeah.
We used to struggle even with tech startups, them raising funds. And then we said that, okay, if investors are looking at Series A and late stage seed companies, why don't we focus on them generating revenue, them finding ways? Because if you are generating revenue, then you can attract the investors regardless, because they are looking for good startups. So that was the case. So I'm going to move on to Layla. Layla, when it comes to, you've been in the game for the past 2 years, and what are the, I would say, opportunities when it comes to scaling up as a business? I'm sure you've tried trial and error, tried so many things. So what are the things that could help a startup or Finial Media growing or scaling as an organization?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for anyone who's not familiar, we're a podcast network. So we produce podcasts that help young Arabs kind of reconnect with the Arab world. And when we started as a creative company producing podcasts, I think for us the business model in the beginning was, we always thought we could survive solely off advertising revenue, and we thought that would be our business model for the long-term future. And as a creative company publishing content online, we thought that was a kind of obvious model that we'd seen working in international markets and could be sort of replicated here. I think what we discovered relatively quickly was a couple of things. So one was that fundraising for a creative entity whose business model is based on advertising is a challenge in the region. And secondly, the advertising market here is, I'd say, somewhat undervalued versus some sort of international markets. So for us, the learning during the journey, I think, was looking at other ways to monetize the content that go beyond the traditional kind of advertising or sponsorship models. And when it comes to scaling up, what we discovered is that there's a whole range of other sort of revenue streams that need to be tapped into to get to the next level and to actually start scaling the business. So what we did is started launching a subscription model, which obviously provides you not only sort of more recurring revenue than doing standalone sort of advertising agreements, but also an opportunity to kind of connect with the community in a way and have more data on your customers that you wouldn't do if you're doing purely kind of B2B deals. So I think, looking for new ways to monetize content is really critical for any sort of creative entrepreneurs. And it doesn't have to be sort of a subscription service that relies on third-party apps like ours does. So, for example, we don't have our own platform, but we distribute our content through third-party apps, and that is facilitated by players like Apple and like Spotify. But there are other ways for entrepreneurs to leverage that kind of monetization model without relying on those kind of apps. So, for example, one of the models that a lot of independent podcasters pursue is sort of membership models, where they use platforms like Patreon, for example, where loyal listeners and audience members have the opportunities to kind of support those creatives and those podcasters because they love the content that they're producing, and they sort of buy into, whether it's exclusive content, bonus content, or even merchandise that is sort of ancillary to the content itself. I think these kind of models give creatives room to sort of grow their business beyond just sort of relying on one revenue stream. And of course, as Manar said, there's other sort of avenues to explore as well around sort of live events, around licensing even. And I think the key is, for creatives have to be creative about how they monetize their content.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I think, even when it comes to tech startups, I've noticed, because I connect a lot of startups with investors, and there was one startup that I was trying to connect investors to, and they were investors are interested right now in subscription model, because that's the model that brings money in the bank every month. Yeah. Right, and that's really desirable right now, comparing to the old e-commerce way and so on. So I think it's very, very interesting. And I've seen how you've kind of linked the business models of the tech startups and what you're doing as well, which is very interesting. And I think that helped you even raise funds, like showing that business model actually really works. What about you, Manar, when it comes to monetizing strategy and traction? Because you're like a bit opposite of what Layla is, because she raised funds and you have not, but you're using other strategies to get traction.
So as I said earlier, so we didn't depend only on, so when we first launched Sikka, the content was for free because we have an online platform. So we depended on the creative consultancy arm. So we do some marketing and communications consultancy on the side, as well as dependent on sponsorship. But as Layla has said, you can't really depend on sponsorship. So it's not something you could always guarantee. We are looking right now to launch sort of not like a membership program, but a subscription program where people have, so there's a paywall to get access to Sikka's content, and that would help us get more revenue generated. But definitely it has been more of the creative consultancy arm that has been the money generator for Sikka in the past 4 years.
Excellent. Najla, when it comes to fundraising, what are the main things that you feel investors look for?
Yeah. Maybe before we get into what investors look for, I think just to build on their previous points, especially in the tech ecosystem, fundraising, and you know this, Saeed, fundraising is such a vanity metric. Everybody wants to announce that I have raised $1 million, whether or not I've got a product or I've got traction or whatever it may be. That's what we're all focused on at the end of the day. And our philosophy, I'm not saying that's bad, I'm not saying fundraising is bad, but our philosophy at Shira is we really need to teach our startups to build more sustainable business models. So it's really exciting to hear that you're looking for other recurring revenue streams as well to support the business. But, I'm just thinking back to the Access Sharjah competition. We just announced the winners. And if you see what we gave the winners was $25,000. That $25,000, part of it is cash, but part of it is what we call POC, or proof of concept, which means it's an opportunity for them to deploy a paid deployment of their solution with a customer. Because I think the most valuable thing that you can provide startups is, at the end of the day, access to market or access to customers. We were actually just having a conversation about one of the new customers that you've acquired with your other businesses as well. I would much rather Shira' be known for helping startups grow sustainable business models and grow their businesses rather than just connecting them to investors. Again, that's not to say investment is a bad thing. I do think it's challenging for creatives. I'm going to, admit that in our ecosystem, there's been a lot of buzzwords. The focus was on e-commerce. Now it's maybe on fintech. I think we haven't seen enough VCs or investors really focused on digital media, and I hope that changes. But there are other options, right? So one is, which is not a sustainable form of funding, but grants and competitions. So competitions similar to Access Sharjah, where, yes, that allows them to win some funding. There's obviously equity, which is what VCs would give, but that is a challenge in the region, as Leila said. I'm not saying, again, it is possible around the world, but we haven't seen it yet in the region. And then the other one is debt. We don't talk about that a lot, and I guess it isn't applicable to every business. But there are organizations like Emirates Development Bank, for example, which are now looking to support startups and SMEs with funding for their working capital. So that is another option. I think even at Shira', we often tend to think of funding as just the equity side of things. Even at Shira', in one of our programs, S3, we're now experimenting with a new form of funding. We call a certain revenue target, let's say $1 million, that they repay that grant. If they don't hit that revenue target, then it's, it doesn't need to be repaid. So again, there are different forms of funding beyond equity, but we often tend to focus on equity. I come back to my initial point, though. At the end of the day, I think the best form of financing is, at the end of the day, building a business model that allows you to be sustainable and to grow and scale your business.
Very, very good point, Najla. And it's funny because while you mentioned, yesterday I received a message that 2 of N5 startups raised funding.
Yeah.
And I was driving and I was like thinking, what was the objective? Is the objective really raising funds or building a successful business? We tend to sometimes
exactly.
That, this startup has raised X amount of money, and it's like he's a champion.
Yeah.
But that comes with the responsibility, right?
Exactly.
And I think it's really important for startups not to celebrate the success of them raising funds, but actually celebrate that they have actually succeeded in their business model.
Exactly.
And that's the most important thing.
Exactly.
And I remember this actually a couple of years when we were at Shira', and that was the discussion, that if the startups cannot raise funds, let them build a successful business model. And that was the main objective of our existence.
Exactly.
So that's very...
and I haven't forgotten your questions on what investors look for. I'll come back to it in the...
Yeah, but I think let's move to the next question when it comes to the importance of Shira' being in the ecosystem. Because I personally believe that Shira' has changed my life. And I got the support because I used to live in Abu Dhabi, and Najla called me and said, Saeed, come to Sharjah and support entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And we work together. So the question to you, I know the answer, but I think to the audience is that how important is it that, Shira' being part of every entrepreneur? And I think if you talk to any entrepreneur or any startups, they always come to Shira' and say it's home.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us more about that.
I mean, I think that, thank you so much, Saeed, for the question. And I think that's a philosophy we've tried to build in Shira' from day one, whether it's with our team or whether it's with startups. It's, because we often talk about the programs as accelerators and incubators, but that's not really what we are at the end of the day. It's not just that we're saying, oh, please come to a program for 3 months, you come out the other end, and that's it. What we are saying is we don't want to incubate businesses, we want to incubate founders at the end of the day. And we want to build a lifelong relationship with those founders. And we've seen, as you know, Saeed, a lot of founders come to our program with one idea. Yes. They try it out. It doesn't work out. They leave. They come back with another idea. doesn't work out, the third one, and it works out. So again, they know that Shura is always there for them. It's not that once you've gotten into the program, that's your one chance and it's done. So it's not a transactional relationship, it's a much deeper human relationship and a human connection that we're building with our entrepreneurs. And I hope, I mean, again, I think it's, hopefully we'll hear it from the entrepreneurs themselves, but I really hope that all our founders would say that it's one of those places that you can feel comfortable to call at any time to discuss anything that's on your mind, be it professional or sometimes be it personal. You know, I'm going through something personally, it's affecting the business. Can we talk about it? That's the kind of organization, that's the kind of culture we're trying to build at Shura and in Sharjah when it comes to founders. And that you see that through our programs. So even the programs that we do offer, for example, S3, it came actually out of years of learnings. As you remember, our initial program was just a 3-month program, and then we tried different permutations and combinations of the various programs. But we've realized actually the entrepreneurial journey, especially in an ecosystem like the UAE, which is still developing, needs to be much longer. And so we are now developing a program that's likely, right now it's 9 months, and if you ask me, I think in the next year, it's likely to be a 12 to 18-month program.
Love that.
Because 3 months it's too short, and you can't expect enough traction in those 3 months. So that's the kind of culture we've been trying to build at Shura, but it would be great to hear as well from our founders what their experience has been.
Yeah, I think for me, being part of Shura has helped me a lot personally. I think it made me grow because I worked in the corporate industry for more than 15 years, and then I moved into tech entrepreneurship with the young entrepreneurs working together, and it's certainly it's really growth that really helped me. And I think Laila, when it comes to your experience being part of an accelerator program or a seed program in Shura, what has it helped Finyal Media?
Gosh, where to start? Well, I'd say, I mean, accelerators in general, first of all, I think are very valuable vehicles to help a startup, right? Not only because they allow you an opportunity to kind of step out of your day-to-day, life of being an entrepreneur and running around like crazy, and sort of step back and look at your business from a higher level and reassess the kind of strategy, which you literally don't have time to do as an entrepreneur, most of the time. But also because they allow you the opportunity to be surrounded by like-minded people, other people who are going through the same ups and downs as you, have sort of mentors who are there to guide you and have seen the same challenges many times before and have the kind of expertise to help you through that. So I think that's sort of the general view of these kind of accelerators that are really, really valuable. But Shura in particular, I think, provided us with so much value on a couple of different levels. One is sort of the technical side of things, the technical side of being an entrepreneur and all that, sort of ticking all the boxes. And the other is more on the kind of personal side. So from a technical point of view, I think for us, a lot of the value came from sort of identifying gaps in our business, whether it was on the business model itself or whether it was gaps within the skill set of the team that we'd built and we needed to fill those. I think that was really helpful for us because we hadn't necessarily seen those weaknesses, I suppose, before in the business. And so having someone to walk you through your whole business and take a look at it from an outside perspective was definitely very, very valuable. But I would also say, from the personal side of things, I mean, the value that we got not only from being part of the accelerator for those 3 months, and working with the team and the sort of practical advice that they would give us, the recommendations, the introductions, was obviously one thing. But as Najla said, it certainly never felt like we were in the accelerator program and then we left and that was it. I mean, we're all here today again sharing the stage, and I think that's testament to the fact that we've all kind of stayed in touch, and there are so many people in Shura who've been incredibly helpful for us in ways that we haven't had from elsewhere, and I think that's support that is really sort of invaluable and unmatched, really, from any other accelerator that I've seen in the region. So I think definitely the network and the support, the recommendations, the introductions that came from the Shura team are benefits that we're still getting today, and that we really value and appreciate.
Yeah, just thank you so much. Just to go back, just to remind everyone that we're talking about an important a pillar in the entrepreneurship ecosystem that is supporting entrepreneurs when it comes to early stage grants or funding, and also the support network that's around it. So Layla is talking about how she got the support from Shura, and of course it's different entity, but I think Shura is a special place.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go into to Manar when it comes to community, because you have been part of one of the first Shura Series A program. How supportive was the community around you throughout your journey in this space?
Well, I'll build on everything that Layla has said. She said everything that's on our mind, really. But I really encourage entrepreneurs who are thinking to pursue a business to contact Shura at the early stages, because the team would help you avoid many of the mistakes that you could be making. They would help guide you in the right direction. So, as Layla has said, you know, when you're building your business, you're in that zone. You might think that everything is going on great, you're on the right track, but then you need that sounding board, and that was Shura for us. You know, Shura helped us avoid so many pitfalls. It helped us avoid so many mistakes, and also provided us with opportunities for growth. So the great thing about Shura is that once you're in forever. So we could always pick up the phone, ask a question, ask guidance, and they would always check in from time to time about the progress of your business. So every few months, we'd chat with the team. Where are we now? What helps do we need? Do we need to speak to one of their business experts? Do we need to speak to a marketing expert, a financial expert? So that kind of support is invaluable when you're in business, because you could be doing one move and your business would go downhill, but they would help you stay on track. And as Najla has said, they help you build a sustainable business, because we don't want just to see more entrepreneurs. We want to see businesses that actually sustain. Yep. We want to see legacies here in the UAE.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll move to the next question. I think this is for Najla. What does the future of SME and funding look like? We're going back to funding now. I know it's not, but going forward, I think thanks to the Ministry of Culture and Youth of bringing this amazing event together, I would not imagine something like this I would see here. But I think this shows our UAE is really supporting the creative sector, and we are growing into this. And I think, personally, we're going to see more funding coming in, more support. And even, I would say that us as an entity, or the creative sector, is actually growing and understanding new business ways or models in order to cater to the creative industry. So what are your thoughts when it comes to funding or future funding,
the future of funding
activities, I would say?
But let me answer your first, just because I don't want to miss it for the audience. You asked me what are 3 things you need to think about if you approach an investor. I'll answer that, and then I'll answer your future of funding. So I think the 3 things, and you actually touched upon it, and I think that's a really important point, is often when we are as founders, we think that, you know what, anybody who's willing to give me the investment, I should take it. You should actually be selective about who you take that money from. You need to find, the investor ultimately is a partner on your journey. And so you need to find an investor who is as passionate about what you are doing, who believes in you and in your business, and is going to be with you for the long run, right? Because it's a long journey. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind, is actually, first of all, it's not just what are the 3 things they are looking for, what are you looking for? As we always ask, what are the investors looking for? What are the founders looking for in their investors? So that's one part. If we do go to the investor side, I think the investors would look at the same thing. The first and foremost, and we see the same at Shura, they would look at the founder. Is this someone that I want to work with? Because again, these investments will last 7 to 10 years, so it's a long journey. So do I believe in the founder? Do I believe they can execute? on the business model. I think number two that they would look at, and I think it's an important one, especially in this region, maybe in other regions less so, but over here they look for traction. They still do. That I want to see product market fit. I'd like to see that you have a product that has achieved some traction in the market. And then the third thing, because at the end of the day with VCs, they're not investing as charity. They're looking for returns and significant returns because they need to return that money to their investors. And so is this a scalable business? Can this grow beyond just the UAE and really grow into a global business that can deliver the kinds of returns that our investors are looking for? So I think those are the three things that VCs would typically look for. In terms of the future of funding, like I said, I think things are now diversifying away from funding being equated to just venture capital.
Yes, I was thinking about the same thing.
So I think it's happening now, and I think we're on that journey. I mean, we're starting to see venture debt. Shuruq in Ventures, Shuruq Ventures, they recently launched their first venture debt fund. So I think that's something that we're going to see more of in the region. Emirates Development Bank, we just talked about, is now offering loans to startups and SMEs as well. So we'll start to see more debt. Hopefully we'll start to see more angel investors. A lot of individuals and family businesses are now looking into investing in startups. And then the other thing, especially in the ecosystem, and I think you'll know this, Saeed, we're seeing a lot of corporates actually really interested, A, in investing in startups, and B, in actually corporate innovation in the sense of them having a challenge in their corporate and looking for startups that can solve those challenges as well. Initially, corporates would support startups more as CSR. Now, especially post-COVID, they're looking at startups and SMEs as key to their businesses. So I think you'll see a lot of corporate innovation as well and family businesses getting into investing as well. So I think it's exciting. I think we'll see a diversity of funds on the horizon in the years to come.
Yeah. I think I've spoken to one of the VCs and he looked at a business that is not highly scalable, but he really wanted to invest. And then he said that, you know what, I'm not going to put my VC money, but I'm going to put my personal money into this business because I really believe in it. And it was actually a subscription based model. So so it's really, really interesting. And I think when we talk about funding, let's not talk only about VCs. We should talk about all sorts of funding because people, like you said, family businesses, angel investors are actually investing and looking for creative startups. Question for Manar when it comes to advising. I would say maybe advising the younger generation when it comes to the creative sector and going forward. What's your advice, or what would you advise the younger Manar 5 years ago?
I would say so I would join an entrepreneurship center like Sharab even before I launch my business. I think that's important. It would just help you save time. For the younger generation, I would say to research the market really well. Sometimes the idea sounds great to you and your friends, and I don't think your friends are great people to go to advise or family members because they'll support you out of love. But dedicate enough time to research your business model really, really well and think of multiple revenue streams. So just don't depend on one. Have something that could help you, especially if we face unforeseen circumstances. So if we had something like, God forbid, the pandemic again, will your business be able to sustain that? I would also advise them to, as I said earlier, be perseverant. It's not, I think a lot of us, or a lot of the younger generation don't have the patience to wait to see things through. And when we were at CEF a couple of weeks back, one of the entrepreneurs there said that, sometimes it takes an average of 3, 5, or even 7 years for your business to really be profitable. And this is something that they need to keep in mind. As great as a business could sound and be, it might take a while for it to be really profitable, to really have an impact, not just on the region, but maybe in the world, if that's your goal. So have patience, start early, have some mentors, join networking events, attend events like these, listen to experts from their communities, get to know them, whether it's on a social media level, events, through the events that Sharjah Entrepreneurship Center Shara organizes. I would say that in a nutshell.
Excellent. What about you, Laila? Your advice?
Yeah, well, I suppose, I mean, I can speak to advice on the sort of fundraising front, maybe. And I'd say a couple of things. Firstly, in the sort of planning phase, I suppose before you even get to the stage where you're out there speaking to investors and looking to raise funds, I think it's important to bear in mind that as creative entrepreneurs, things might take longer than you anticipated, and sort of finding a way to keep your business as lean as possible for as long as possible is really critical. Sort of bootstrapping the business and keeping your costs down and finding ways to monetize as early as possible is really, really important, to allow yourself enough time and make sure you have enough sort of runway before you get to the stage where you're sort of in desperate need of cash and have to raise the funds. And then I'd say, you know, the next stage when it comes to actually speaking to investors and trying to raise the funds, I mean, our experience has been that typical sort of traditional VC money doesn't necessarily flow into creative startups, especially here in the region. So I think if you're sort of knocking on the doors of traditional VC funds, typically they're unlikely to have a mandate that includes you know, content or creative startups. A lot of them are very much focused on tech products, you know, sort of ag tech and fintech and all the other techs that are out there and are on trend right now. So I think what's important is that you look beyond just VC money into other sort of avenues of financing the business. Not only, you know, as we've talked about a lot in terms of making it a sustainable business in its own right, but also, you know, maybe branching out in terms of the types of individuals or institutions that you consider to be potential investors. So that could mean angel investors who have a strong belief in the mission of what you're trying to accomplish. It could be more sort of family offices, again, that share the same vision as you. And it could also be more sort of strategic investors, right? Because typically in the media space, at least, there's a lot of consolidation of smaller startups because it can sometimes be difficult for businesses to be sort of to scale up without sort of merging with others. And I think looking to strategic investors who are in the same industry as you, very much understand your industry, your business model, and sort of has the same shared vision of the future, I think is an important avenue to consider that not a lot of startups realize, I think, at the beginning.
I'm sure you, at some point, you thought that, shall I shift to tech and just move on?
I mean, that's been the debate from day one. Are we content? Are we tech?
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's very important to try out and look at other business models that have worked outside our region and see how people have actually succeed when it comes to that. And I think, and I said that when we were having our meeting on Zoom, that when it comes to startups, I think if you're looking for the finish line, then you have a long way.
Yeah.
But I think progress is very, very important. Every time you progress to the next step, you always need to try new things, because previously maybe no one has built this before, and you're at the forefront of innovation or creativity. So you are being first. And I remember when I was building my tech startup, it was a struggle because I went into an industry that no one out there is in front of me. So instead of me looking at role models, I was the role model leading the way.
Exactly.
And it's really challenging because you don't have research that has been written out there or someone you can look into. And this is why you need to try, let the market answer your questions, and then adapt accordingly.
I think you can relate to some of the challenges because you were in hardware.
Yes.
And again, you don't see a lot of investors in hardware in the region.
Yeah.
So very similar challenges to
There were some times I was sitting in GITEX and investors come to me and say, we don't invest in hardware startups.
Yeah.
And it really, you don't know what to do, cry or...
Yeah.
But I think it's a learning. I think our ecosystem has evolved.
Yeah.
Today we have a creative conference, which is incredible. And tomorrow we see hundreds of creative startups coming in because we have the support of our leadership. So any final thoughts or advice you want to give to the audience?
Well, I mean, I think the first step, and I think our founders have said it, is start. I think often and I've seen it with so many of the founders that I've met, is that they've had this idea in their head and it's just been there for months and for years, and I think they've been afraid to take the first step, and it's understandable. It is a big first step, but I think with the resources that we now have, whether it's conferences like these, whether it's entities like In5 or Shara and so on, the support is there for entrepreneurs. And so I would say the first step is just start.
Excellent. And we have all the resources, alhamdulillah. Manar?
Same thing. I would say be perseverant, follow your idea through. I believe that this is the best time to be an entrepreneur right now. We have a lot of opportunities, especially if if you want to operate in the digital front. It's never been easier, but just be prepared and have all your information there.
Yeah. Layla?
I'd say a couple of things. One is one of the things I learned very early on was take any meeting you can get. When you're starting out, never assume that a meeting with someone is not going to be useful or valuable, because you have no idea how much support you're going to need from the community around you as you progress and as your business grows. And the second thing I would say is, I know this is a panel about financing and sort of fundraising for creatives, but obviously the starting point for any creative business is the passion, right? So I think the first thing you need to sort of think about and hone in on is, how passionate you are about your idea. And if you have that passion and if you have that drive, then that's the thing that's going to get you through all of the ups and downs and the highs and the lows of being an entrepreneur, because it's never easy, but if you have the passion, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I think the passion is one thing that is very important. I think this is always, when I have an idea or I think of something that I want to start, I don't sleep to the point that my wife is like, what the hell are you doing? I just want to say one final thought, and I think this is very important, that I'm just going to say a story that when I was younger, I used to see these space rockets go up, and then when they finish their mission, they fall. They fall in the sea.
Yes. Yeah.
And I used to wonder why the waste? Why doesn't it go and park itself? And 20 or 30 years later, Elon Musk comes and creates this and saves the rocket industry 50 million.
Yeah.
And I said that this idea actually, I had this idea when I was younger, but I never believed that would work, or maybe it would have been successful. But I promised myself one thing. I said that anyone who comes with a crazy idea or creative idea, I should support them.
Yeah.
And support them until they reach their point, and then let the industry decide if this is a failure or not. Not me shutting down that creative idea. And I think having Shara or N5, we are there to support you until you reach that point. And then if the market decides that you're not good enough, or you didn't get that funding, but at least you learned so much along the way. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sri.
Amazing, and appreciate it, and great panel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Manal. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you,
Najla.
Thanks.